Mamma mia! Nintendo just announced that Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild are getting free updates on April 25th to support Labo VR or Nintendo Labo VR Kit. So this, to me, is super exciting. This is something we discussed when the Labo Kit when the VR Kit was first rumored. It's like, how cool would it be if Nintendo updated some of their older games to support Labo VR? And then they announced Labo VR proper, and that didn't seem to happen. But here we are. Finally, a reveal trailer showing it off for both, again, Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild. And there's both not too much and also a lot to digest here, I think. The most interesting thing to me, I think, is that for Mario Odyssey, we're getting different, like, mini, based, like, little tiny challenges that take place in one of the three kingdoms, either the Seaside, Luncheon, or...
the Cap Kingdom, I think.
Cap Kingdom, there we go, yeah. Whereas, and it looks like it takes place in very controlled camera angles, where you complete certain tasks, like grab coins or musical notes. And then for Breath of the Wild, it seems to be the entire freaking game. So, I don't quite get why they could barely get to work with Mario, but the entirety of Breath of the Wild. But in either case, I'm stoked for this. But let's get your guys' raw reactions. What do you think about this?
Well, right off the bat, I don't think it's a matter of getting one to work and not getting the other to work. Mario Odyssey, kids play that. If they're going to have kids playing Mario Odyssey, they want to have like a little bite-sized adventure, and I think that's the idea behind it. Legend of Zelda, that skews a little older, so it makes sense for people with, older people to be playing that, and they know how to monitor themselves a little bit more when it comes to Labo VR. They don't have to worry about, kids hurting their eyes or anything like that. So I think that's why we're getting mini missions for Odyssey and the whole game for Legend of Zelda.
I mean, that could be the case, but I feel like a decent amount of kids probably play Zelda as well. I mean, definitely less. Like, as you said, Breath of the Wild skews older, but I don't know if it's, that's true across the board. So I can't imagine that would be the only reason, although I struggle to think of another reason that there would be such a discrepancy between Mario and Zelda. But either way, this is pretty interesting. I mean, it's kind of weird that we're now casually talking about Nintendo having VR. Like, it's not so long ago that we were like, is this ever going to happen? And people would ask us, do you think it will ever happen? And we were like, maybe. Now it's here and they're doing it.
That's a crazy thing. Like, this shows that Nintendo's taking it a little bit more seriously than it might seem at first glance. Steve, I think you feel similar to this about me, if not even more so, right?
I'm ready to explode.
Oh, man.
This is so cool. Like, I cannot wait. This is... When we talked about Labo VR, I was already saying, please use this on your first-party games. Please add support for this. This is going to be a bombshell for Labo, really. I mean, it's a bombshell for VR. We now have a VR platform that has a Mario and a freaking Zelda game on it. That immediately blows the immense libraries of every other VR platform out of the water.
Wow, that's I don't know if I go that far, but I do see what you're saying. So the question though then is, because on the one hand I agree with you, on the other we've already seen similar compatibility with Labo, such as in Mario Kart. We can use the vehicle kit as well as the variety kit, and neither of which lit the world on fire. So why do you think this feels different to you, Steve, versus those?
So and I understand a lot of our fans probably haven't gotten to experience VR, and Labo is going to be the perfect entry point for that for them, but there is something just, for lack of a better word, magical about playing VR in general. Not even within Nintendo properties. Once you put that headset on, it's like something in your brain gets tricked into thinking you're in that world. Mm-hmm. And getting to see Hyrule that way, like, that is going to be huge for so many people. And Breath of the Wild, I mean, is just a massive game that was so culturally important, and you've got this huge install base already, so people are going to flock to this, I think, just because of the ability to be more connected to these worlds that only Nintendo can make and that people love so much. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, as somebody who has played hundreds of games in VR, I've never been even remotely close to this excited.
Mm-hmm. You have a key word in there, Steve, though. Headset. There's no headset for Labo VR. This is it's very smart of Nintendo to have this only be $40. That means anybody can pick it up for very cheap and experience these games in VR. And having Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, two games that most Nintendo fans are already going to have, is a very smart move. There's no doubt about that. But It's going to be, I think this is more of a novelty than anything else. Once again, Odyssey is a very short burst. I guarantee you'll be able to complete those Labo missions within maybe 2 hours at most. It's not going to take too long at all.
Yeah.
And while in Breath of the Wild, you have the entire game there. But as both Ash and Andre can attest, there's no headset. You have to hold up the gamepad, or not the gamepad, but the Switch itself, to your face with the Labo VR goggles, or whatever you call them, and use the Joy-Cons in that way. And I can't imagine that's a very comfortable way to play the game, especially the one with the scope of Breath of the Wild. So I think that's going to be the limiting factors here.
So Ash and I actually had a chance to try that form factor, I believe, with the God, what was that plaza called? Play Plaza? Ash?
The VR, it was the VR Plaza?
Yeah,
was it,
something
right?
like that.
Yeah,
I think.
VR
So
Plaza.
I believe that's a form factor we tried, and granted, it's only for a few minutes, but it seemed to work. It seemed to work pretty well. Like, I didn't feel like I was weighted down having to hold the Switch to my face for those few minutes. But I do think, as you're kind of saying, Derek, on a longer, it may not be an ideal setup for a longer play session. But I do wonder how long you can even play these games anyways. You were kind of touching on earlier. I mean, the interesting thing here is most VR experiences are designed with VR in mind. Breath of the Wild very much isn't. It looked to be the exact same game, except now in VR. And I'm excited to try it, but it also makes me wonder, how well is that going to work? I mean, first off, I just want to say I'm impressed it works at all. The fact that they're making that work in VR, hell yeah, that's awesome. But also a little bit concerned, because a huge part, a huge issue with VR is people getting motion sickness from moving around in an environment, especially in environments not made for it, but even in environments designed with that in mind, where games have purposely, the better received games have taken steps to reduce getting motion sickness. And I don't know if Zelda's going to be doing anything here to offset that, or what they could do to even offset that.
I mean, it may be that when you toggle the Toy-Con VR goggles option on, perhaps there are changes made behind the scenes that do reduce motion sickness. I'm not sure what that would be, but perhaps there's something going on behind the scenes that would help, that aspect of things. But I agree with you, Andre, yet I also kind of feel the opposite way, in that it is true that there's a risk there with Breath of the Wild not having been built for VR in the first place, but at the same time, that's the one that really interests me here. Like, Mario Odyssey, I love the game, but, it's 3 mini missions, and as Derek said, you're probably going to be done with those in a matter of a couple of hours, and we already know what, Labo software looks like. We know what that feels like when you get a new Labo game and you're done with everything you can do with it in a couple of hours. Like, that doesn't really pique my interest all that much. But the idea of getting to actually see and experience all of that version of Hyrule in VR, again, we don't know how it's going to work, if it's going to be that convincing, because it wasn't built from the ground up for VR, but that's what has me interested. And I think it's an incredibly smart thing that they have the starter kit now, because I'm actually, I'll tell you right now, I would not spend $80 just to check this out, but $40 with the blaster, which I already think is the coolest part of the VR set anyway, I might actually check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not horribly concerned about how Zelda's going to perform in VR.
Even at 30 frames per second, which seems to still be the case.
So I haven't played a low frame rate game. I'll give you that in VR, but the camera is pulled out really far compared to most traditional VR games. A lot of VR games like to go for the first person kind of thing, and I could definitely see that making me sick really fast. But I've noticed the only point of comparison I really have for a game of this type would be Astrobot on PSVR, which I don't know if that runs at 30 or 60, because I spent a very
60. Or even,
okay.
I think PSVR even upscales everything to 120, I believe.
Oh, okay. I'll have to take your word for that, just because I don't have a PSVR. But when I played Astrobot, it felt pretty good, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to the camera angle and the lack of things like, camera shaking effects and that kind of stuff. Because I don't quite remember Breath of the Wild doing a whole lot of camera shake, but if they disable that or any features similar to that, then I could see it working pretty well. But there's still a whole lot of questions about this. I mean, we got a trailer, and it was pretty cool, and it seemed like maybe it was moving the camera in response to how the player moves, but we don't see who's playing it and what they're doing, so we don't actually know what's happening to make those camera movements occur.
I mean, to me, it looks like the user still has control. Like, if you didn't know this was a VR trailer, you'd have no idea that there's anything different about it. But granted, we don't know for sure, you're right. I do think, I mean, I'm guessing that this has to work pretty well on the base level if Nintendo's even offering it, because they already have warnings all over the place about, hey, don't play this if you're under 6 years old, I believe. So Nintendo's very cognizant of, motion sickness and, or I imagine they're very cognizant of motion sickness, especially with younger children. So I'm guessing this works pretty well, and that it kind of, like, I kind of love the idea that somehow maybe Nintendo's the one to get, like, these fully immersive, like, AAA experiences working fine with VR when everyone else has been struggling with it, Leave it to Nintendo to somehow figure it out. Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Exactly. And I mean, whether they nail it or even just, land just shy of nailing it, the buy-in here is $40, if you just want to get the starter kit, which, compared to something like PlayStation VR, when you're not sure, yes, you're going to get a higher grade experience, a much higher grade experience, but if you're not sure you're going to like it, or if you're going to feel sick when you're playing it, that's like $300 or whatever down the drain. Mm-hmm. And, then you're kind of bought in and you can't, they can't easily get that money back. So I do think that they really hit on something here where maybe it's not the best, most convincing VR, but it's a way to get some of their audience into it with a low buy-in, and then, perhaps that'll get that audience to buy into other Labo kits. I don't know if there's as much of a connection there, but this is a really good way to open up the Labo brand to people like us, gaming enthusiasts who might otherwise have looked at the other Labo kits and are like, that's cool, but not for me.
Mm-hmm. It may be a gimmick, but $40 for what seems to be a fun little, extra for these old games you've already played or older games you've already played, that's awesome. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, if you wanted a cheap way to get in and try it out, I'm right there with you. Like, this isn't a bad way to go, especially compared to the price of other VR headsets, which also have a lot more involved. Like we talked about before, setting up a PSVR is a bit of a nightmare. How many freaking dozens of cables are everywhere?
Yeah.
Whereas this, granted, you still have to spend a few hours to put the cardboard together, but once you get everything together, it's definitely a simpler experience overall. Real quick, I just wanted to note something I noticed, I think, in the trailer, and that's in the Mario Odyssey levels. It looks like you have camera control by moving your head around, as you might expect. Like you can look around while you move Mario independently, so it seems. Whereas in Zelda, that doesn't seem to be the case. So I wonder that might help with the motion sickness, or maybe it wouldn't. I don't know, but Zelda just seems to be straight up Zelda in 3D basically more than it is in VR. Whereas Mario seems to be more VR focused. Again, that's only my take. I could be wrong. Maybe the camera will work independently too in Zelda.
There was something interesting I noticed in the Zelda portion of the trailer, Andre. When you see Link running out to the Great Plateau in that opening scene that we all have memorized by now, it does look like the player assumes control of the camera at a certain point, because it goes from behind Link up and over his head to kind of look out at the area below. And I could be wrong, but I don't remember that happening in the retail game.
So I'm looking at the scene right now, and it's not actually it's not the actual cinematic that happens. It's just a person reenacting the cinematic, like running out to the cliff edge. But but I'm guessing the fact that you have independent control on the right stick, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be moving your head for this. I think that would be a nightmare or a recipe for getting motion sickness. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe in first person you'll be able to do it since you have motion controls anyway, so you have that sort of aspect to it, but probably not beyond that.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that'd be perfect for using like the visor maybe, or like the telescope thing you have.
The telescope thing you have, shooting an arrow, take your pick. There's quite a bit you can do there. And, and Ash is hitting around the same point. I don't know if this is going to help people like, well, I liked Labo VR, maybe I'll check out that robot kit. That's not going to happen. Nobody else is going to pick out, enjoy this and be like, I want to check out the other Labos. We might get a few, but definitely not a major idea. But this is definitely going to help boost sales of the Labo VR. I think it was going to be, okay, that's kind of an interesting curiosity, but the games don't interest me. They're just not really worth buying it. This way, you can get that experience, might even encourage them to try out the other kits that are part of Labo VR, and this is a good way to get more people to actually check it out and give it a fighting chance to actually succeed on a impressive level.
So hold on real quick, you touched on you don't think this will make anyone else pick up other Labo kits. However, Nathaniel Bandy actually posted on Twitter something that I replied to earlier, where he suggested combining this with a vehicle kit so you can play Mario Kart in VR. Mario Kart headset, you have other Joy-Cons for the pedal and the steering wheel. Bam, a fully immersive Mario Kart VR experience. Do you think there's a chance that could happen?
I would be in on that day one. That is Mario Kart, I think for me anyway, is the game I want to see in VR for the Switch, especially because we have, Japan has that Mario Kart arcade game that I desperately want to play.
Right, Ash did, in fact.
Yeah, I did, and I can say it's worth playing once, not more than that, though. It's definitely a one and done experience. It's very much a novelty.
That's disappointing.
But yeah, I mean, and that's kind of how I feel about Mario Kart as well. Like, I would love to play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in VR, but I feel like I could just as easily and just as easily do that with this setup, with just the goggles, and not have to deal with all the other kits and all the other cardboard to get, like, the pedal set up. And I don't know. I can see Nintendo actually doing that, but I don't know how much of a mass appeal that's going to hold. That's a lot of cardboard, a lot of clutter, and just a lot of setup. I mean, like, the idea of the GameCube to Game Boy Advance cable is really cool. If you can get 4 players playing 4 Swords Adventures, it's amazing.
But it never happens.
The setup, but it never happens
exactly.
because the setup and the clutter is crazy. So I'm kind of thinking of it along those lines.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I think plus you need 4 Joy-Cons. I forget if you said that or not. So yeah, there is a lot of hassle there. I am surprised. Well, so here's a question for you: do you think we're going to see more support for other games? Because I do think Mario Kart 8 would seemingly be a shoo-in. It already has a 2-player split-screen 60 frames per second mode, so it can clearly support it. I just wonder if maybe they haven't yet for motion sickness concerns. Because if there is a game that's going to give you motion sickness, it'd be Mario Kart, with you like racing at high speed, going upside down, racing along walls. So maybe that's why we won't, or maybe that's why we wouldn't. But do you think we will get support for other games beyond Mario and Zelda?
I'd be surprised if we didn't. Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that the level of engineering from a software standpoint that had to go into this product is kind of insane. To support only a handful of games, like 1 or 2 games, and then call it done, would kind of be insane because they had to put in a lot of work on the software side to make something like this functional, especially on a device as small as the Switch. They have to have bigger plans, I think.
Mm-hmm. I
could see this serving ARMS quite well. Like, ARMS is, the buzz around ARMS has completely died down. But given the point of view you have over the shoulders of your character, it's very much a one-on-one fighting game. And I feel like ARMS VR could be kind of a cool, novelty update. Not going to be anything that like lasts, but it could be cool.
I mean, with the way you use the Joy-Cons in that, I can't really see ARMS.
Oh, that's true. You'd have to use button controls.
Exactly.
You need 4 of them again. 4 Joy-Cons.
Right. And with honestly, I see Splatoon 2 as a better option.
I was thinking that as well. Splatoon, I think, would happen.
Just the way you move around and everything. I think that would work, especially with all that. And if you want a more Zelda-like experience, if you want to expand upon that, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a good choice. It doesn't look the best in handheld mode, so that might hold it back. So that's...
yeah, that's a good point. That might be a little rough. You have that already halved resolution. That's going to be real ugly. However, though, I thought you were going to go in a different direction, Derek, with your Zelda take. Because what about the Link's Awakening remake, which already kind of looks like you're staring down at a diorama?
That would be really cool.
Right?
Yeah.
A 3D effect on that would be amazing.
It would be. I mean, we already kind of had a little taste of that with A Link Between Worlds, right? So I think that's going to take that one step farther. Also, going to throw it out there, we have the mysterious Smash Brothers 3.0 patch that we know nothing about yet, right? Do you think
that's true?
Do you think we could get VR there?
I was thinking of that.
Scare the crap out of you having the characters hit the screen.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
That would be really... I don't know. I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, is Smash Bros. The kind of game with the kind of view it has, does it really need VR? But then again, do any of these games need VR? Not really. So, in terms of a novelty thing, that could be pretty cool, especially as you said with the screen KOs. That could be really neat.
I'm gonna throw it out there too. When I did our camera, like our behind the scenes breakdown of a lot of levels in the game, we can move the camera around to see just how much detail there is. Those levels have a ton of detail, like to the sides that you would never see. I'm starting to wonder, maybe what if that was done for VR purposes, so your view is fully encompassed by this world.
That doesn't seem like the kind of thing Sakurai would do in terms of like designing the game with VR concerns in mind.
Maybe more that it seems like a perfect fit, I suppose.
That's true. Yeah, like a perfect existing fit. Totally.
Exactly,
yeah. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see Smash itself being playable in VR. I would think maybe more like a replay viewer or something, because Smash is a game that's highly reliant on its frame rate being rock solid, and I just wonder if the Switch would be able to handle, like, say, an 8-player match in VR, with all the types of effects that can be going on the screen. So I don't know. I have my doubts about Smash having VR support. If it does get it, I think that it might not be for the game proper, but maybe something more akin to Mario Odyssey's VR presentation.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I thought in the Mario Odyssey segment, I loved how one of the levels was the Luncheon Kingdom, which already has like a low polygon look to it, which I wonder if that was partially deliberate, because it did seem like the camera, like the little sections it shows, like they did seem to be very deliberately chosen. And I wouldn't be surprised, for as impressive as Breath of the Wild is, I think Mario might be pushing the Switch more. So maybe that's why they'd be more deliberate with the challenge setups in those cases. I could be totally off base, but I just wonder if that was a factor to make sure it is running at constant 60 frames per second, while you have free like camera control with your head.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm thinking because Mario definitely is a much better looking game in general than Breath of the Wild, which makes sense considering Breath of the Wild was a Wii U game before it was ever on the Switch, or before it was ever announced for the Switch, I should say. But yeah, it could come down to just the fact that, you don't want a game to perform noticeably worse in VR than it does in handheld mode, I would imagine. So I can't imagine that trying to render Mario twice would not have an impact on performance, especially given how good Mario performs, especially when compared to Breath of the Wild, unfortunately.
Right. Well, now, Andre, I have a question for you. If we're let's assume that Smash Brothers Labo VR support is on the way, that potentially opens up Labo VR support to other 2D platformer type games like Kirby Star Allies or New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. Do you think that also is viable in terms of getting games like that compatible with Labo VR? Because I'm not sure I see the usefulness really of playing a 2D game in VR necessarily, but I guess if we're talking Smash Brothers, it is possible that support could be extended to other primarily 2D games.
Well, in those specific examples, in the case of New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, definitely not. The game already has a very flat appearance, so I don't know how VR is going to help. I mean, Kirby's a possibility. Kirby does have a lot of depth to it as is. We've seen this on the 3DS. True. Even. Like, those are fully rendered worlds in the background there, and the foreground. Like, everything's rendered. So,
the better option, if you're looking at 2D and that kind of VR support, it is Tropical Freeze, let's be honest.
Oh my
That's
god,
true. Tropical Freeze as well.
Especially with how it has those 3D segments even. Like those Rocket Barrel segments would be a lot of fun, I think, in virtual reality. So, man, if Tropical Freeze came to this, I'd be all over this.
Yeah, now you're making me think of the underwater areas in Tropical Freeze, and now I'm really kind of wanting to check that out in VR.
It'd be... no, of course, we should mention there are still some drawbacks to this. Of course, are the control method Derek already touched on, where you're holding it up to your face. Also, this is going to be a really low resolution. I think we already see a little bit of this in the trailer. I'm not sure that fully conveys how low resolution these look in real life, because Ash and I played Labo VR, and it's pretty low res. But it's still impressive in spite of that. So this is going to be a very interesting, give and take for this experience. You are going to be enveloped in this world at the expense of the image quality. But that is the case to some extent with almost every VR headset, but it is even more the case with Labo VR. With that said, I am personally super excited for the potential of this and the novelty of seeing AAA Nintendo games in VR, which is something I wasn't sure we were going to get when they first revealed this kit, and I'm just really happy that it's there at all, especially as a free update.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, do you think it's possible that they're laying the groundwork for, or at least testing the waters for possible, direct to eShop, Toy-Con VR specific compatible releases? Are they maybe... I'm wondering if maybe they're testing the ground for this. If people are interested, let's start engineering eShop titles specifically made to work with VR.
Pushmo would be perfect for this.
Ah, good point.
Also... Yeah. Freaking Pokemon Snap HD, baby! I want that! Make it happen! Come on, you got the freaking camera Toy-Con already! Do it!
I do like the Pushmo idea. That actually is that's a great fit.
You can push it with your head even. Push the blocks in and out with your head.
There you go. I will say, as is, just with these two games, it's a novel idea, but it's definitely not enough for me to want to pick up a Labo VR kit. It's just, I'm not that sold enough on VR in general. But if they start expanding these free updates beyond Mario and Zelda, and we get Tropical Freeze, Link's Awakening, and what have you, then I might start breaking down and be like, well, it is only $40, and I think that's going to be the key.
Yeah,
here.
If they expand
the more support they put out, the more
the better
appealing
value
this
it becomes.
is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if they broaden the platform, $40 as an entry point into VR, as Ash said earlier, that is really freaking good. Even if it is on the lower end of VR, you are getting these AAA experiences in it, and that really shouldn't be undervalued.
Yeah, plus the fact that you get, you do also kind of get the blaster, which feels like an afterthought at this point. But it should be said that Andre and I played the blaster. We played all the Toy-Con VR games, and the blaster was really cool.
It was really cool.
You do also get that as part of this $40 buy-in, which is not bad.
Speaking of blasters, you know, be a perfect VR or a perfect eShop game, Ash?
Link's Crossbow Training 2?
Yeah, you got me.
I knew you were going there with it. Ugh.
But, I think there's a lot of potential here. Like, I just love the fact that as Steve, I think, earlier said, we're talking about Nintendo in VR. It's something we're almost taking for granted at this point, when just a few weeks ago, we didn't even know it was going to happen. So, this is really exciting, and it's a VR system that you can use anywhere. You don't have to use it in your house, you don't have to use it, tethered to your TV. You can take this thing wherever you go, and that's pretty cool. Like, playing on the plane, for instance. Granted, it might look a little bit goofy, but whatever. What else are you going to do for 8 hours, so...
That's fair, actually, because when I was flying back from PAX East just a couple of days ago, there was a guy next to me doing, like, the Google Cardboard VR type thing on his phone, and he was just, right next to me, just doing VR on his phone, and I guess if he can do that, then there's no reason you can't take your Toy-Con VR goggles with you anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, when we first heard about Toy-Con VR, or Labo VR, I was excited, but not enough to really put my money where my mouth is. But upon hearing about Zelda and Mario getting it, I put in my pre-order on the way to record this discussion. It's too exciting to be able to think about playing the games we all know and love from Nintendo in VR. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, I can't help but feel like Ash kind of alluded to the fact that maybe the VR Labo kit is acting as a Trojan horse to get people to buy the other kits. I'm more curious as to whether or not this Labo is to see how much interest there is in VR, and for Nintendo to potentially release a more full-featured VR headset for the Switch. Something like with a dang head strap. Because I keep thinking, if they keep putting out content like this, if we get more updates like this, that poor cardboard headset will have to be purchased multiple times in my house.
It's going to get very sweaty, very soggy. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would hope that this is something to just test the waters and see, do people want this? Should we make one out of something more durable, something more lasting? Because I could definitely, if we keep getting stuff like this, I could definitely see myself wanting something that I can do even more with.
Yeah, I will say real quick, in the headset portion itself, you do have like a plastic tray there. So I think the cardboard should hold up okay, I think, because your face isn't resting directly against it for the most part, as I recall, except for the very rim. With that said, I agree with you, Steve. I do hope or wonder if this might be them testing the waters, right? And perhaps, lead the way for a more complete headset down the line. Maybe something that's fully plastic, already assembled, comes with a headset, maybe compatible, maybe designed for compatibility with the Switch Pro, primarily as they get better resolution, for instance. But yeah, I do wonder if this is just kind of setting the groundwork and testing the waters for the future.
Man, I do wonder if we would see the fruits of that testing during the current hardware cycle, though, just because if they release Labo VR now, then in a couple years they release this new fully featured VR in response to player feedback, that kind of leads to a little market confusion, I feel, and also kind of, that risks making people who've bought Labo VR feel maybe a little bit burned. So I do agree that maybe there is a chance that they're looking at this and thinking, hey, maybe we should gauge interest in a fully featured VR experience, but I don't think we'll see that until the next hardware cycle, whether that's the Switch Pro or whatever comes after the Switch.
Well, Switch Pro
2,
might be this.
I don't know.
Switch Pro might be this year, going by those
and
rumors.
That's true. So I almost feel like it's more viable for whatever comes after the Switch and Switch Pro. I don't know if they would turn it around that quickly and release two
disagree.
different
If we're already
VR
getting a
kits.
Switch Pro this year, 2 years into the Switch, anything's on the table.
Fair enough. Yeah.
All right, and with that, I think we're about done here, so thank you so much for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to those in the description below. It's a good way to keep up to date on everything we post. And of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for tons more on Labo VR and everything else on Nintendo Switch as well. We'll catch you later. Bye.